It's been 3 years and a full reboot of the franchise later, with a new theatrically released movie and an accompanying animated series on the way. I think it's safe to say at this point that Rise the TMNT as a series is officially dead. It's always been kind of a steadfast rule that you don't produce 2 cartoons at the same time about 2 different versions of the same licensed character. Unless, of course, you're Sonic. There won't be another season or another tie-in movie. What we got is what we got. And since I can give this movie a new perspective with the benefit of hindsight, I want to look back at Rise's last hurrah before the big creative reset. This is the Turtles movie that was left behind. One of my favorite aspects of the Turtles is how, despite being comic book characters, they're also big comic book readers. They collect whatever books they can get their hands on in the sewer and love the medium. If you are a sewer-dwelling anthropomorphic mutant, I'm sure you've been looking for an easier way to get your 3-fingered hands on comics. Well, with today's sponsor, I've got you covered. On June 1st at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be doing a live stream on Whatnot to auction a whole lot of old and rare comics from my collection. Whatnot is an amazing app for buying and selling merchandise with a personal touch to connect sellers with their audience. Whatnot is an app that lets you do auctions like eBay, but also live and interactive with the seller, so I can talk to you and answer questions during the show. I'll even read your name off as the lucky winner if you want. There's a ton of sellers on there already selling action figures, comics, DVDs, and more. You can use my link in the description to sign up for Whatnot and get a $15 credit towards your first purchase. Then you should go to my account and set a reminder for my stream since you won't want to miss it on June 1st. See you there! It's the 40th anniversary of the Turtles. I've already reviewed every other movie in the franchise except this one, so let's go! I hate when they go to the future and can't figure out a way to make the Turtles look older other than to add hair. God, that's so weird. They should never have hair. Rise of the TMNT, the movie, the game, the series, the visual novel, is about a time-displaced Casey Jones going back to the past to fight the shitty aliens who suck ass with the teenage versions of his mentors. The antagonistic force of this film are the alien race called the Krang, who are actually really scary and threatening this time, as opposed to the previous versions who are ineffectual and generally very silly. This movie serves as a send-off to a great animated series that just never really got a fair chance. But unfortunately, despite loving the show it spawned from, I've realized I don't really care much for this movie. I've always been a big defender of Rise of the TMNT, the series. After it was initially cancelled, I did a review of it to praise it that could act as a sort of rallying call for people to try to push for the show to get more episodes. But its fate was sealed. It had really impressive art direction and appealing character designs, funny comedy, unique world building not seen in any other iteration of the Turtles, and some of the most complex fight choreography in any Western animated show, which probably also contributed to its demise because this show looked expensive. You could practically see Viacom's money burning anytime an action scene started. Gotta love it. I would've watched 3 or 4 more seasons of this easily. Except Nickelodeon sabotaged it by playing it in bizarre time slots or just not at all. The good old spectacular Spider-Man treatment. But even if the series was cut short well before its time, I can't help but wonder why this movie exists. It doesn't really add anything substantial for the characters or conclude anything left hanging. It just hangs awkwardly off the end of it. Like, here's a great show, and then, hey, that's there too. It doesn't serve well as a finale because it's missing a lot of major side characters from the series. No Baron, Draxum, or Cassandra Jones outside of a small cameo. None of the cool Magic Monster Underworld characters or locations, even though those were really big for the show. And nothing to really directly connect the Krang back to Shredder. That part is just all implied with the visuals. Really, the big multi-part finale in the show itself felt like a better conclusion in terms of wrapping up all the story threads and including all the characters. Somehow this movie feels like a DLC expansion that doesn't really add much. If anything, it just kind of highlights the flaws of the series that I didn't think about before. So the main series ended with the Turtles finally fighting the Shredder, unlocking their cool magic powers, and realizing that Leonardo should be in charge. This movie picks up right away with Leo struggling to fit the role of the leader because he doesn't like taking orders or feedback from the other 3 turtles. So over the course of this adventure, he's battling his own ego to finally be the Leonardo that Casey remembers and looks up to. I guess I overlooked it at the time, but I've discovered in retrospect that Rise is one of the biggest examples of Surf Dracula in recent memory. A lot of TMNT basics take a good long while to appear in this version, like the team getting their proper weapons in the finale, learning Splinter's backstory, fighting the real Shredder, Leo becoming the leader of the team. Even their reinvention of Splinter was a depressed schlub needing to find the motivation to start acting like their proper master. I suppose I was blind to it at the time because I was having so much fun with the rest of the show that these things didn't stand out. Like, the premise is still Ninja Turtles, they're still doing all the same things they ought to be. It's not as bad as the 36 hours of television it took for the Punisher to finally definitely for sure decide he wants to be the Punisher, definitely for sure this time. But now I see that this is still another example of a reboot that relies heavily on previous knowledge of the franchise, so it can build up to those elements you already expected to be there. It's like a prequel, but not actually a prequel. I mean, I guess that's what the title was always alluding to. Even this universe didn't get a proper Casey Jones until the final thing in it. A key element in Rise of the TMNT, the movie, is time travel, something this franchise doesn't play with too often, barring a few spots in the 2012 cartoon. Casey Jones is Leonardo's protege from the future that comes back to prevent an alien invasion apocalypse scenario. His main goal is to basically prevent his entire life from happening because the world is so screwed where he comes from. And other than an admittedly pretty cool looking mask that he barely wears, there's really nothing this character has in common with any other version of Casey except the name. I miss the himbo Punisher as a hobby guy. I'm getting really tired of every new version of Casey and April being teenagers. It irritates me that the 2012 show came up with that and then it just became the default. So I guess this guy's like future Trunks with a hockey mask. And he's not too bad. I've also noticed that over the last two iterations of the Turtles, Michelangelo's personality seems to be changing. He's less of like the fun, party skater, surfer, stoner dude, and now just like the humble, friendly one. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, it's hard to talk about this movie because the plot is very basic. They just gotta keep this MacGuffin thing away from the bad guys to prevent Judgment Day. Not a lot happens really except running from one action set piece to the next. It's almost like just an overlong random episode of the show in that sense. This could have just been like a 2-part episode in the middle of season 2 or something. I don't know why they decided this would be the movie, because the movie implies that it's like the big most important thing. That's not to say it's totally unenjoyable, there's plenty in here that I like too. The Krang are handled in an interesting way. The movie takes them very seriously and always treats them as a huge threat. They aren't the butt of a joke or shown to be silly or incompetent. This is the first time Krang has been a genuine badass that gets to trash the Turtles in combat. And these designs are really cool. Honestly, I'd kinda like to see this version of Krang hang out with the 2003 version of Shredder. Naturally, the animation is stellar, and even manages to outdo the craziest scenes in the series with high-impact, high-velocity fight scenes that are pure spectacle. I know giving them magic powers wasn't a popular choice, but it just looks so cool in action, and it's utilized in really creative ways. A lot of people ask me why I didn't review this when it came out, and I think I was battling with the fact that I didn't enjoy it that much. I really liked the series, and the two showrunners, Ant Ward and Andy Siriano, both even reposted my video and said nice things. So I feel bad-mouthing the movie after all that, but it's like, just not that interesting to me. It's got the fight scenes going for it, and the characters are all very likable and charming as always. And it's just eye candy out the wazoo, but the story just feels unnecessary and half-baked. It doesn't follow up the series in any meaningful way, it's just yet another adventure that also happened. But now that I look back on it, it feels like the show genuinely closed out in a great way and didn't need anything else thrown on top of it. Maybe they didn't need more episodes. Maybe it ended at like the perfect time. At least they got a proper finale. Most shows canceled that early don't even get that. When the Rise of the TMNT movie was released, I think the prevailing feeling among fans of this version was that if the movie was successful enough, it'd help the show get revived for more seasons. It really seemed like a good sign that Netflix was putting out the movie and maybe they'd continue the series on their platform. But now it's more clear that Netflix is just the place Nickelodeon dumps unwanted movies they don't feel like airing out on TV. It's the new straight-to-DVD bargain bin of entertainment. Well worth like the $30 a month it costs now or whatever. And then there's the matter of Mutant Mayhem. Considering how long the animation pipeline takes for a full feature film, especially one with art direction this complex. Mutant Mayhem was probably well underway when this movie was coming together. These things are planned years in advance. While I really enjoyed Rise of the TMNT, I know that it just wasn't meant to be. The Turtles brand has already moved on to a much more successful and far less divisive new iteration. And I'm okay with that. I love Mutant Mayhem, and the new 2D animated series looks interesting too. As sad as it is that things moved on so quickly, at least TMNT remains strong and ever present. Losing Rise was painful at the time, but gaining Mutant Mayhem feels like fair trade. I always get mad at YouTube for not putting my videos in the subscription box because people will comment, "Finally, Xavier uploads again after all these years," not knowing 3 other videos came out within the last month already. So maybe that stupid bell icon thing will help you remember I exist. If you want other ways to support the channel, you can always go hit up that Patreon for early videos and exclusive stuff because it's just $1. I'm not kidding, it's only $1. Isn't that cool? If just 5% of the people subscribed to me donated only $1 a month, I could make videos even faster and keep my house. You can also check out our merch on TeePublic, or just buy some of my random stuff on eBay. I have a pretty substantial collection of old toys that are still in the box in perfect condition, so go take a look in case you find something you like. And lastly, since this is a YouTube video and you probably play Fortnite, drop my creator code XavierGM next time you buy a silly dance or a cool character skin. Really helps me out. See you next time!